And I am your host, Kimmy Coco. And today our special guest is running for Superior Court Judge in Fulton County. Her name is Shermela Williams. We may be a bit dusty because we have been out of commission for a few months because of COVID-19. So if you're watching this, you survived. I hope everyone is still paying attention. COVID is still out there. So we need you to wear your mask. We need you to keep your hands clean. We need you to mind your business and drink your water and keep your vitamins and all those good things because COVID is still out here. We're going to talk about COVID. We're going to talk about what's going on in this world. And we're going to hit all that stuff. But right now, we're going to get into our interview with our special guest because besides all this stuff that's going on, we also have an election coming up.
Yes, we do.
And this may be one of the most important elections that you can get involved in your lifetime, this election in 2020. And as you have been seeing, and I've been preaching, if you have ever watched this podcast, that you have to get involved in what's going on in your local elections. So, Ms. I'm saying this wrong, sorry. Ms. Shermela.
Long
It's just
E.
that simple, and I'm making it very difficult.
It's okay.
Shermela Williams is running for Fulton County Superior Court Judge.
That's right.
Tell people what is involved in the role of Superior Court Judge.
Absolutely. So the Fulton County Superior Court is arguably the busiest and most powerful trial court in our state. And the reason for that is the Fulton County Superior Court, of course, handles all criminal felony matters that happen here in Fulton County. They handle all lawsuits that happen here in Fulton County between them and state court. And so when I say lawsuits, I mean if you go somewhere and you fall or you get injured or you're suing someone. Civil, yes. So all of those things. And then, of course, they also handle family law matters. So in the family law division, they handle divorces, child custody cases, child support cases, etc. But here is where the Fulton County Superior Court stands out from any other superior court in the state. If you have to sue the governor, the secretary of state, or the state of Georgia for any reason, for violation of your civil rights, no matter where in the state of Georgia you are, no matter where in the state of Georgia it happens, that lawsuit has to be brought here in Fulton County. And so it behooves all of us, not just Fulton County residents, but all of us who are citizens of the state of Georgia and residents of the state of Georgia to ensure that we have the absolute best judges and the absolute most qualified and fairest judges on the Fulton County Superior Court.
So you're going to be listed on the ballot in Fulton County only, or?
Yes, in Fulton County only.
So as a resident of Fulton County, when you vote, who you vote for can potentially affect everything or people in this entire state of Georgia.
Absolutely. You see the shirts that say Atlanta influences everything, and I always laugh when I see them, but it's so true. And the part of the reason that Atlanta influences everything is because Atlanta is the state capital. It is the seat of state government. So all of our state government actors are here in Atlanta as far as their offices where they have to be sued, etc. Much of the policy that affects all of the state of Georgia comes out of the city of Atlanta by way of the governor who sits right down the street from where we are right now.
Wow. Wow. So you're from Atlanta?
Born and raised. Yes, ma'am.
Wow. Okay. So I was reading about you online, and it said that your father was murdered at the age of 7. So you have a personal connection to a lot of what's going on. Maybe a few days ago, we heard Dr. King's daughter speak, and she was talking about how she could relate to what was going on with the young girl's, George Floyd's daughter. There was a viral video that went out, and she was like, "My father affected the world," and it really spoke to how tragedy can affect the decisions that you make in your life, and how carrying that on and on and on and really just wanting to affect the change and try to make everybody's life better. So tell us how that made you decide to be a lawmaker in judge?
Absolutely. So when I was 7, like you said, my father was murdered and nothing ever happened. The person who, and it's known who killed him, who shot him, but that person was never arrested. No charges were ever brought. No justice was ever gained for my father. And so from that space at the age of 7, what I knew was that that was wrong, because my mother always taught me, when you do something wrong, you're supposed to pay the cost for it, right? And so I just felt like no other little 7-year-old girl should feel the way I felt. And I felt like there was nothing that was being done to take away the hurt that I felt. And so part of that was I wanted to make sure that no other little girl felt like that to the extent that I could. And in my 7-year-old brain, I knew that there was something I could do, but what it was, I didn't know. And I've always been in love with law shows. So Matlock was one of my favorite shows as a little bitty girl. And so I wanted to become a lawyer because I wanted to help people. And I wanted to, in my personal statement for law school, I wrote that I wanted to be the voice for the silent, the eyes for the blind, and the strength for the weak. And to this day, that is still how I feel. And what I knew as I grew was that prosecutors and judges have the absolute greatest impact on our community. And that is also where people of color are least represented. Prosecutors, judges, the criminal justice system as a whole, as we know, disproportionately affects minority communities. And so I wanted to become a lawyer to help people. The reason I became a prosecutor was because it's the prosecutor who decides what charges are going to be brought, what cases are going to be dismissed. Specifically here in the state of Georgia, robbery is 1 to 20 years incarceration, up to 1 to 20 years incarceration. But it's also probatable, parolable, et cetera. And sentencing is in the complete discretion of the judge. Armed robbery is a mandatory minimum of 10 years in the state of Georgia, day for day. It is not parolable. It is not probatable. So if you get convicted of an armed robbery or you plead to an armed robbery and the judge gives you 20 years, that's 20 years that you got to serve day for day. Now, it's the prosecutor who decides if you're going to be charged with armed robbery versus robbery. And we see the huge difference between those. So for me, it was a thing of, defense attorneys are important, and I think we need great people on all sides. That's the way the system works most effectively, when we've got great people in the police department, great people in the public defender on the criminal defense side, great people in the prosecutor's office, great judges. But for me, it was one of those things of the defense attorneys can only defend against what the prosecutors put in front of them. The judges can only sentence based upon whatever the prosecutors put in front of them. And then at the end of the day, the judges are the ones who are making the decisions about people and things that impact our community. Absolutely. Down to bonds, our livelihood, for instance. So, even if you think about drug cases, here in Georgia, possession of a drug is a felony, whereas in other states, it's a misdemeanor. So we already have the whole issue of, okay, well, you get convicted of a drug case, you're already a felon, which impacts your housing, your employment opportunities, your ability to get student loans, if you're going to college, and so many other things. And what if we took the money that we spent on incarcerating someone for a petty theft, a drug case, a low-level, nonviolent offense? What if we took the money that we spent on incarcerating them and took that same amount to put it in a treatment program, or a drug treatment program, or a diversion program to help them learn job skills, an education literacy program? Because what we also see is that a large part of the crime that we experience, especially here in Fulton County, is directly related to poverty, lack of education, and a whole other set of societal factors. And so we've got to address that. Otherwise, we're going to continue to have repeat offenders, and that number is going to grow with our youthful offenders, with our adult offenders. So it's a whole sequence of things. It is.
So
it
we
is.
Need somebody, especially in Fulton County, and I hope that everyone understands how important it is to vote, because the presidential election, you see everyone talks about it. It's the most debated thing. But down the ballot is where the local policies and people are. So, make sure that you get out there and vote. So the title people get confused with is nonpartisan.
Yes.
So when you vote for Superior Court judge, it doesn't matter Democrat or Republican, you can vote for you.
Correct. Absolutely.
Okay.
So when you go to the polls, you have the option of choosing one of 3 types of ballots. In Georgia, we don't have assigned parties, so you can go to the poll and pull whatever ballot you want on that day. So you can pull a Republican ballot, you can pull a Democratic ballot, you can pull a nonpartisan ballot. Judicial races will show up on all of those ballots.
So when you vote in the primary election, though, you do have to pick whether it is a Democrat or Republican, right? Or is that just...
You have to pull one of those 3. So you can pull a Democrat,
okay.
Republican, or a nonpartisan. But you make an excellent point because, like, for instance, I've been out all week going to the different early voting precincts, and really talking to people. And a lot of people thought that they were showing up to vote for president. And I said, no, you need to come back in November for that. Right now, you're just voting for the primary. So if you're pulling a Republican ballot during the primary, the only name you will see on there is Donald Trump because he's the only candidate.
He's the only candidate for president because, okay, so you vote for who you want to run in November. So that's what you do first. So right now,
yes.
on Tuesday, you're voting for who you want to run for you in November against Donald Trump because
Correct.
He's the only Republican left.
Correct.
But also on the ballot, you will see policies.
Correct.
Judges.
Correct. And judges are only on this ballot. So we're not on the November ballot.
Wow.
So this is the only opportunity you get to vote for your judges.
Okay. This is what I need people to understand. The time and the sense of urgency. Because I think that we get so caught up in the social media world that we have kind of, as a people, lost our sense of time and our sense of urgency. Because you can just do whatever you want on social media whenever you want, and you can, say who you want or who you think you should vote for. But at the end of the day, early voting is over.
Yes, correct. Ended on Friday.
The only time now that you have to vote is on Tuesday. So I need people to understand the sense of urgency. Some of people have gone back to work. Some haven't due to COVID. So keep in mind that some people have not gone back to work at polling locations due to COVID. So the lines may be longer. There was something going on with vote by mail. In the state of Georgia, you had the opportunity to vote by mail. So is it too late to get a paper ballot and drop it off somewhere, or what's going on with that? So
it is too late to request a paper ballot. If you already requested one, and here's what I've been telling people. If you already requested one and you have not received it, then please be prepared to go to the polls. Because today is Sunday, that's when we're sitting here doing this. So you only have Monday to receive it. And your absentee ballot has to be received by the Board of Elections Tuesday, June 9th by 7 p.m.
And they have ballot drop-off locations.
Correct.
You can look and see where yours is, or can you drop it off at any one that's available?
So you can drop your absentee ballot off at any of the ballot locations around the county, in the county that you live, okay? And so if you go to the Secretary of State's website, you can find those for any county. If you go to my website, there's a link that says click register to vote, and you can also see the various polling precincts as far as where you're assigned. You can also see the absentee ballot drop-off locations. But yes, your ballot has to be received by 7 p.m. on Tuesday to count.
Personal story, I requested an absentee ballot because I'm scared of COVID. This is my first day coming outside since
I'm
March.
honored.
I got my absentee ballot. It took forever. Why, I don't know. They rejected it. They said that I didn't pick a party, which I know I did because there's literally like 2 other questions besides who you're voting for on the ballot. So I sent it back again. And you can check and make sure that they got it.
Yep.
The Democratic Party has someone that's keeping up with this because of all that's gone on in the past with elections in Georgia. So they called me and made sure that I got my ballot and made sure that there was no trickery going on. And so it was legit. I got it. I filled it back out. I mailed it back. If you missed that vote, you missed it. You have to go out and vote on Tuesday, period.
Yep. Or if you still have your absentee ballot, you can go drop it off in the drop box.
But
yes.
I'm going to assume the people I'm talking to, if you haven't gotten your ballot by mail,
right,
you ain't dropping it off, then you right now have to understand that on Tuesday, the lines are going to be long. It might be raining because we're dealing with a tropical storm system in the Gulf of Mexico that's going to fizzle out, and by Tuesday it could be raining. I'm just giving you time to get prepared, get your poncho, get your umbrella, Because like I said in the beginning of this interview, this is one of the most important elections that we can face in our lifetime. And if you have not gotten to the point in your life and in your mind that you see how not voting can mess up everybody, we need to have another conversation on another day. But for the people that understand, make sure you vote, because Fulton County, tell them again how important Fulton County is to the state of Georgia.
If you have to sue the governor, the Secretary of State, and the Secretary of State, as we know, based on the last election, is the person who oversees all elections and administers the election process here in Georgia, or any other state government official. If you have to sue any of them for any violation of your civil rights or whatnot, that suit has to be brought here in Fulton County.
So your Fulton County vote is so important to everyone in Georgia. Yes.
And I think it's important to know how
Good.
I think it's important for us to know how many judges the governor's appointing and why us running is so important.
Yeah, so what's going on? Because there's, in the news, we've heard that Governor Kemp has taken it upon himself to appoint judges. Everyone's not happy about that. So please explain to us what's going on.
Sure. So the way the appointment or the way the process works for judges here in the state of Georgia is that judges can be appointed or they are elected, right? And really it's both. So what happens is if a judge steps down, retires, resigns, whatever, before the end of their term, then the governor has the right to appoint. However, that person still goes on the next available ballot for the people to decide if they agree with the governor's appointment, if they want the governor's appointment to stay or to go. So what we've seen in Fulton County in particular is that minorities are not being appointed to the bench, right? So if we look at the Fulton County bench currently, the Fulton County Superior Court has 20 Superior Court judges. Of the 20, 7 are minorities. Of those 7, 4 ran for office. They were not appointed by any governor. 4 ran for office and 1, right? The other 3, 2 were appointed and 1 was just, well, I'm sorry, those 3 were appointed. I said that wrong. Now, of the 3 that were appointed, 2 were appointed in the 90s. The other one was appointed in 2018. So what we know is since about 2002, there's been 1 person of color appointed to the Fulton County Superior Court bench.
Since 2002, there's been 1 person of color appointed to the Fulton County Superior Court bench. And that's because they haven't run into this group of people that's going to vote on Tuesday.
And I'm sorry. And to that point, though, let me say this. In the last 2 years, the governor, and when I say the governor, I mean Governor Deal and Governor Kemp, in the last 2 years, there have been 5 appointments to the Fulton County bench. Just in the last 2 years.
I got a question, and it's just more of just kind of, I guess, kind of learning the process. How much of an impact do you as a judge have on like the electoral college?
So only to the extent that a case comes before the court. If someone files a lawsuit or something like that, then that's where the judges get involved. But as far as just being able to create legislation or anything like that, that's not what the judges do. So our legislators, they're the ones who create laws, statutes, and legislation. Our judges are the ones who interpret and give it meat. So judges are critically important because, I mean, we all know, and we learned this in English class, the way something is written can be interpreted a myriad of ways or a whole lot of different ways, right? So what happens is the state legislators, they write the laws, but the judges are the ones who interpret the laws when people come before them, whether it's for a criminal case, a lawsuit, or some other kind of case that comes before them. So it's critically important that we have judges who not only are competent and know the law and all of that other good stuff, but who are also being fair, unbiased, and neutral in their interpretation of the law.
So when a case is presented, as a judge, do judges base their decision on how it's presented or how they interpreted it, or does it? It's just that line.
So it's kind of a combination of the two, because when anybody comes before the court, of course, you have a right to a lawyer, in a criminal case. And in a civil case, you don't always have a lawyer, but, most times you do, rather. And so the judge is to always follow the law. But of course, part of that is no one person can know every single law, every single statute that is in our space. And so part of that is you have the lawyers who will argue on behalf of their client, or if people are representing themselves, they're arguing on behalf of themselves. And then it's the judge's job to research and make sure the appropriate law is being applied. And so the reason I say both is because, of course, if your lawyer has found some good law and is making good points and all this other good stuff on your behalf, then of course that is going to sway the decision, because you're now bringing new law to the judge, or law rather, that is specifically on point to your case, to the judge's attention. And so it's important that, yes, the judges have to do their own independent research. Yes, that is true. And they have to follow the law. Yes, that is true. But it's also important to have advocates on both sides. I tell people, your Google search is not a substitute for my law degree.
Right.
Like, people like me put ourselves in debt and go to law school for a reason.
Right.
So don't use Google as your interpretation or as your directory for what the law means.
Know what else to say, because I stand here on my platform, just little old me, every week almost, and I tell people to vote, and I really try to bring people on the show to talk about how they're going to affect change, because as we see, we definitely need some changes to be made. Go ahead.
I don't like to do name shouts, so I won't say any names, but I think it's important to note that, again, Shermela is from Fulton County.
Exactly.
She
that
grew
was
up
my
in
next
Fulton
point.
County.
Right. You need someone that's familiar with your area.
Yeah, and we'll just say O for opposition has only been in office, she's only lived in Fulton County the time she's been in office. As soon as she got the appointment is when she moved into, so she doesn't have much experience with the people of Fulton County. And I think that's huge, because she's interacting daily with people who live in Fulton County.
So does anyone know off the top of their head, if not I can do a quick Google search, what the demographics are of Fulton County?
Fulton County is approximately half and half, black and white. And then, so it's approximately 40-something-odd% black, 40-something-odd% white. And then the outliers would be people of other ethnicities and races. So Hispanic, Asian, and then people who classify themselves as other. So it's predominantly black and white.
Okay. What cities, because I get confused sometimes as well, what cities are included in Fulton County? Is it just Atlanta?
No. So that's a great question. So Fulton County is made up of 15 cities.
Wow.
All the way from Milton at the very northern point to the most southern point is Chattahoochee Hills. And in between that you have, now I'm going to miss somebody, but I'm going to try to get them all. But you have, let me start from the top. You have Milton, you have Alpharetta, you have Sandy Springs, you have Johns Creek, you have Pine Lake, you have the city of Atlanta, you have Hapeville, College Park, East Point, city of South Fulton, you have Union City, Fairburn. Did I say city of Atlanta already, of course?
Well, I think most people know that, Atlanta. Okay, so here I have Alpharetta, Atlanta, Chattahoochee Hills, College Park, East Point, Fairburn, Hapeville, Johns Creek, Milton, Mountain Park, Palmetto, Roswell, Sandy Springs, South Fulton, and Union City. This is a call to action. On Tuesday, as a matter of fact, on today, get your action plan together and decide that you're going to go vote on Tuesday. Now, some companies give you time off to go vote. Check to see if you're not working right now, you got all day. If you are working right now, make sure you check with your employer to see how much time off you get with pay to go vote.
And the polls are open from 7 to 7.
7 to 7.
And as long as you are in line at 7 p.m., you have to be given the right to vote. So that actually came out of a case that was a couple of years ago where people were being denied the right to vote because they had not actually voted by 7 p.m., even though they were in line at 7. And so this happened in various counties across the state. But what happened? People filed lawsuits, emergency petitions were filed in Fulton County, and it was a Fulton County judge who decided, nope, if you are in line at 7 p.m., you must be given the opportunity to vote.
So if you're in line by 7 p.m., people fought for your right to be able to vote, and as long as you were in line by 7 p.m.
I'd like you to share your story about conviction and why you left being a prosecutor, what you saw in the case, because I think it's imperative that people understand Shermela's experience, her conviction, and why she's dedicated to changing the community.
Our last couple minutes, and just tell us your story.
Okay. So I was a prosecutor for approximately 10 years. And in the space of that, like I said, prosecutors have the ultimate power in the system next to judges. And so I prosecuted everything from drug cases to murder cases, child sex abuse cases, sexual assault cases, everything in between, armed robbery, burglary, everything. And so I had a murder case where there were two young black men. One was 17 years old. His mother actually sent him down here from New Jersey because he was getting in some trouble. Jazzy, yes. And so his mother sent him down here from Jersey to stay with her sister. And so he and his cousin went to the gas station, and this happened down in Union City. The cousin was bumping music. It was really, really loud. I guess he thought it was Freaknik. I don't know if he knew that Freaknik was no more.
They brought it back last year.
It was not the same. Having grown up here, I can tell you it was not the same. So in any case, what happens is the victim comes out of the gas station, and he kind of looks over in the direction of where the music is, shakes his head, and walks back to his car. In the process of doing something, the shooter actually looks and sees. He closes the trunk of his, well, no, he doesn't close the trunk at that point. He walks over to the victim and said, "What the F are you looking at?" And the victim just kind of looked at him and said, "You," and turned back around and went on his merry way. And then the shooter said something to him. The victim turned back around. At this point, the victim's brother is coming out of the gas station. The shooter took one step back, pulled his pistol out of his gun out of his waistband, and shot the victim one time, just point blank to the chest. The victim falls back, and of course his brother catches him as he's falling back, because the brother, it all happens so fast. And so then the victim falls into the brother's arms. The shooter walks back over to his car, closes the trunk of the PT Cruiser, gets into the driver's seat, and politely drives off. Okay, and I use the word politely with sarcasm. In the process of them turning out of the parking lot, and here's where the 17-year-old comes into play. The 17-year-old reached his arm out of the car, and by all witness accounts, he raised his arm and he was pointing upward, not towards the victim. He pointed upward and he shot his gun in the air 3 times. There was no conversation between the shooter and the victim before the shooting, during the shooting, or anything like that, right? And Georgia does not have an accessory after the fact law. So long story short, both of them were arrested for murder. And in the process of investigating the case, the facts for the 17-year-old who shot in the air, even though what he did was dumb, it was stupid, it was just a bad decision, and even deplorable, right? Somebody's laying on the ground dying and you're shooting in the air. It was not murder. So I went to my supervisors. I said, "Hey, this is not a murder case." We go back and forth. I pull the law, give them everything. This is not an accessory after the fact. This is not that. That's not what we have in Georgia. And they refused to dismiss the case against the 17-year-old. I say, "Listen, we can charge him with reckless conduct, possession of all kinds of other stuff that were appropriate as far as the charges, but not murder." So the long and short of it is I quit my job because I refused to try that case. Because for me, it is truly a thing of I'm going to always follow the law. I'm going to always do what's right. But what I also understand is that we have to have people in our judicial system who are courageous enough to do what's right, even in the face of what could be their own peril, So I was fortunate that I was in a position where I was able to find another job really quickly. And what happened was, and I think this is a testament to the power of the voice, another attorney in the office tried the case. The jury found that 17-year-old not guilty of murder. but guilty of exactly what I said that they would, that, you know, the charges were appropriate for. And so we've got to make sure that we are holding our justice system accountable by way of our prosecutors, our judges, our sheriffs, our public defenders, our criminal defense attorneys, all of the above. Because like I said, we can't blame just one aspect, because the system works together as a whole in its entirety. And even in the space of my brother was arrested for a crime he didn't commit when he was in his 30s. It was a mistaken identity. And I just happened to be home at that point and was able to help navigate and guide them through the system. Otherwise, his 4 days over in Rice Street could have turned into 4 years, 40 years. I mean, during the course of my time as a prosecutor, I have 3 cases that I'm the one who figured out the defendant didn't do it.
Wow.
That these are 3 people who are identified by the people, you know, who I'm the one who figured out they didn't do it. And so we've got to have checks and balances on all sides. We've got to have people who are in tune with our community.
Yes.
We've got to have people who understand that, yes, there are some people who prison is the only option we have. It's just a fact of life.
Yeah.
But there are some people who are redeemable and who deserve a second and sometimes even a third chance to try to get it right, when especially when we're talking about our low-level nonviolent offenders. I mean, because when we're talking about mental health issues, drug issues, those are addictions. And that's where the programming comes in, and accountability courts and all of the job training, all of that becomes critically ill. And this last story I'm going to tell, when I was in Philadelphia, I was a prosecutor. And longer story short, a year or so later, I'm in the Macy's, because Macy's is that's my spot. So I'm in the Macy's buying a pair of shoes, because shoes are my thing. And this lady, I hand her my debit card, and she looks at my debit card, and she's looking really weird at it. And I'm looking at her like, what is wrong with her? Right, what's the problem? And I was in Cherry Hill, actually, at the mall in Jersey. And so she looks at me and she says, "Are you a prosecutor?" At which point I kind of back up from the counter. So that I have space in case I don't know what you're about to say or do. And we're in Jersey. So I back up from the counter, and when I back up from the counter, I say, "Yes, ma'am." And she literally lunges over towards me. And at this point, I don't have time to really react. And she grabs me in this bear hug. Right. And so now I'm like stunned, like, whoa, what's going on? And she said, "You don't remember me. My name is," and she said her name. And I said, "Your son was a criminal defendant in one of my courtrooms." And she said, "Yes." And she said, I remembered her as soon as she said that. She came up to me in court and said, "Ma'am, I need to talk to you. My son is on the calendar." I said to her, "I'm the prosecutor. I'm not the defense attorney." Because oftentimes when I was in court, because I am Black, people would assume I was the defense attorney.
Right.
And she said, "No, I need to talk to you." She said, "Every single time my son gets arrested," she said, "I come and I beg them not to let him out, because every single time he gets out, he goes back and he does the same thing." She said, "Every single time I beg them, please put him in a treatment program." And they always just slap him on the wrist and let him out. She said, "And you were the first person and the only person who has ever listened to me." And she said, "You fought for him to go to treatment when the defense attorneys were trying to just let him out." She said, "And here we are a year later." She said, "My son did a 6-month treatment program." She said, "He has been out. He is clean. He is working." She said, he has not relapsed." She said, "He is a whole different person, and I have you to thank for that."
Wow.
Yes.
Thank you. I'm thanking you for her. Okay, well, off the record, we're going to act like she's not here. I want to talk to the people. Listen, you guys have a problem, apparently. I noticed this when Kamala Harris was running for president, with Black women being prosecutors. I don't understand that, because there are going to be prosecutors. Let's start there. And there are going to be people that go to jail. That's just how it is. That's the world. That's the country. We can argue about why that is later. Because you can't stop that from happening, it would behoove us all to have someone in those positions that are from where we're from, that can see what we see, that can understand what we can understand. So I think we should reconsider the way we look at Black women in those positions, because often they're looked at like, "Oh, you're the cops," and that's why no one wanted to vote for Kamala. But now everybody's like, "Oh my God, Joe Biden." You got to pick somebody. We got to pick somebody. That was 19 people. We're down to 1 in that position as president, whatever. Down the ballot in the local elections, as far as policy goes, as far as judges go, as far as prosecutors go, as far as the attorney general goes, as far as like any of that kind of stuff, you got to get involved. And when you get involved, it doesn't just stop after you vote. Keep on and make sure that these people are held accountable for the decisions that they're making because they affect every aspect of your life. So we're going to wrap it up because we've been talking for quite a while. But I want people to go to your website because you have another day or so. You have a couple hours. Do your research. Tell people how they can find out more about you and your campaign.
Absolutely. So on Facebook, and so also I tell you I'm an adjunct at Spelman. So they tell me I'm not supposed to say Instagram. I'm supposed to say the gram or IG.
Oh, on IG.
On IG, yes, and Facebook. You can find me at Shermela, Shermela FOR Judge. And then on Twitter, it's Shermela, the number 4 Judge. And then my website is ShermelaFORJudge.com.
Okay, do your research, and then after you do that, follow us on IG, on the gram, at CTD_ATL, so we can continue to have these conversations. I am Kimmy Coco, and we are going to sign off, and then we'll talk to you next week.